All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Today is Tuesday, April 26, 2022, and we have quite a bit to catch up on. So, honestly, let's jump right into it. So, I've decided to sort of change a little bit of the layout or readout style simply because you might notice nothing too significant of a change on the end of those that are obviously listening on audio, but I've decided to sort of start putting quotes on the right hand side for the news and things like this, something that is a little more positive and enticing for those watching visually, instead of just random tweets of articles or something like this. So, anyways, let's jump into it. So, first and foremost, we're going to be doing a catch up on a nice big recap of the last 3 to 5 days. And yes, I know, with Elon, Twitter, the whole thing. So we'll jump into it. Now, first and foremost, the Iron Dome system has intercepted multiple rocket fires from Gaza towards southern Israel. Without getting into it, without going down that rabbit hole and getting sort of sidelined in an emotional sense, from a human-on-human perspective, for me personally, it's kind of like, again, I don't mean to say that this is something we should simply say, okay, let's move on from, but at the same time, it's one of those things that it's, again, not the people, but those at the top that are using real, bombs and all of this as a chess game, so to speak, dare I say, in my opinion. I want to be clear for the sake of YouTube. The only people that are dying are the innocents. The chessboard is just getting more and more damaged, so to speak, in a geographical sense. And I don't even like to call it a chessboard, but it's what we have to call it. I mean, if you take a look, you see that the bombs are just flying all over the place, the rockets. It's unfortunate. The next thing is that a fire at a Russian Airspace Defense Research Institute in Tver occurred. At least one was dead and 30 injured, according to local media. The cause of the fire is unknown at this time. Now, what's interesting about this is, of course, relative to the day this was reported, which I believe was April 21st, which was about 5 days from the day I'm recording this. I'm sure revelations have been made pertaining to the investigation of transparency of these events and developments. Excuse me. However, simply, folks, as I see it, and I could be very wrong, but you want my opinion, it's tit for tat. This is probably the acts of a three-letter agency that belongs to a Western nation. Let's just put it that way. It's just my opinion, doesn't mean that I'm right, but I see this from my perspective. This looks like you throw a punch, I defend, I throw a punch, you defend, repeat, right? Again, hate to say it, but strategy, it seems. The next thing is that Warner Brothers Discovery has terminated CNN Plus streaming service at the end of the month, which failed just after 21 days. Again, I'm going to leave that there. I'm not really trying to do the whole own the libs thing. I'm really trying to take a non-emotional, neutral stance. But with that being said, CNN Plus streaming service basically shutting down after less than a month. I mean, it just goes to show you that people truly are going for independent media. And in my humble opinion, excuse me, that really says something. That people are, dare I say, consciously or subconsciously not even viewing independent media as media anymore, just simply information and data. And they're saying to themselves, whether consciously or not, I want to absorb this data, whether accurate or not, because it may help me inquire and gain new perspectives on other things. I find that to be absolutely fantastic. I want to say, just for the sake of YouTube, this is just my opinion. The next thing is that the Florida House has voted in favor to strip Disney of privileged tax and self-governing status. You can actually hear in a particular video from the Florida channel, if I'm not mistaken, that Democrats are screaming as the voting takes place. What's interesting about this is, I'll be honest with you. Again, I always take the perspective of it's all a game, it's all a show, Republican, Democrat, it does not matter. But when I look at something like this, I cannot help but think, if I'm being blatantly honest, there are certain corporate interests that may have lost control. And I don't want to say that conclusively or as if I have inside knowledge, because again, that's a big jump to make. To say that corporate interests have lost control, especially in America, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. That's quite a big, if we're being real with ourselves, that's a big leap or assumption or conclusion or hypothesis to make. So maybe I'm making a stretch by saying that, but it's hard to say. The next thing is that Obama has claimed in a speech at Stanford, and I quote, "Despite the fact that we have now essentially clinically tested the vaccine on billions of people worldwide, around 1 in 5 Americans is still going to put themselves at risk rather than get vaccinated," end quote. I'm going to leave that there, and I will follow that up with this. Dr. Fauci insists that the CDC should be above U.S. federal courts. And I quote, "We are concerned about courts getting involved in things that are unequivocally a public health decision. This is a CDC issue," end quote. I don't even get me started on the issues I have with what he said right there. And this is just my opinion. But last time I checked, the point of a law was so that it oversaw everything pertaining to the activities, developments, affairs of that given nation. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a lawyer. Let me be clear. But wow, when I saw that, I was like, holy crap. The next thing is that German Chancellor Scholz says that the European Union gas embargo would not end the war in Ukraine and justifies the country's reluctance to supply heavy weapons with the fear of a nuclear escalation, according to Spiegel. Let me just ensure that yes. Again, I'll be honest with you. I am not a fan of this German Chancellor, nor am I really a fan of any global politician, even within my own nation, actually, especially in my own nation, being in Canada, but would not end the war in Ukraine and justifies that. I agree with him in this particular context. This is just my perspective. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me be very clear. This is just a personal opinion of mine. I know you folks like to hear it. From a strategical perspective and a non-emotional one and an attempted neutral perspective, I agree. Yeah, that's in other words, my next step from that would be to de-escalate. But again, God forbid the warmongers de-escalate. So anyways, the next thing is that Germany's central bank warns that the European Union embargo on Russian gas would dent GDP by 5% in 2022, triggering an energy crisis and the deepest recession of recent decades. To be fair, again, it's a chess game, tit for tat, as I've always said. So when you see, the Russians saying, well, okay, if the Germans don't want to, do business anymore, that's their problem. It's just a matter of calling a bluff, so to speak, in my opinion, and who's going to last the longest. And, who's going to let their people suffer more. And it's so sad to say, but those that the people elected into said offices of said respective nations are not even looking out for the interest of the people, because if they truly were, then, don't get me started. So, excuse me. The next thing is that an Israeli drone had dropped tear gas in the courtyards of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Again, I'm just going to be straight, human on human. I as I say, as it pertains to rockets coming into the being fired into Israel from the Strip. There's no other way other than one side, and I say this in general, not just specifically pertaining to this conflict. One side needs to say, okay, we're done with the violence. That's it. We're done. Until then, it's going to keep going, in my opinion. It'll just be strategy after strategy. The next thing, is that the House GOP within America demands Twitter's board to preserve all records related to Elon Musk's offer to buy the platform. I'm going to be honest. Again, one could argue the Republicans are attempting to take sort of a culture war side pertaining to this, but at the same time, it just also so happens to be, in my humble opinion, a very good move in a legal and legislative way. Now, again, pertaining to that, you know what, since let's just cover the Elon Musk thing right now. For those that want my opinion on it, truthfully, long term, this is terrible. Short term, with respects to Elon Musk buying out all of Twitter. Short term, I think this is I'm trying to say this without getting emotional with respects to sort of what do they call it? Owning the libs or whatever the term is, something like this. Someone I saw on Twitter said Elon Musk literally owns the libs now, but I found that funny. But I say that I have a lot of friends that are Democrats, liberal, you name it, and I try to do my best to truly see both sides, as most of you familiar with the channel know. I don't like the fact that one man, particularly Musk, and this is just my opinion, has all of this data, and essentially has it now. With that being said, however, one must then ask, what's the shittier end of the stick here? Would we rather have Prince Al-Walid, who did not want this buyout to occur, where text messages allegedly leaked of Elon texting Saudi princes saying, why are you screwing me on this deal? And then text messages of Bill Gates and Elon leaked as well, pertaining to Bill Gates having a short position against Tesla. This is, I don't know what to make of any of this at the moment. Some say this is all a stage, and I don't rule that out. Some say that this is, all a stage to constantly continue to create division amongst the people, to stir up emotions. I am strongly considering that, but I'm not concluding that. Let me be clear. So at this point, either way, it's not good. If you guys want to know my honest opinion about that. The next thing is that Biden has said, and I quote, "In the U.S. military, every vehicle is going to be climate friendly. Every vehicle. We're spending billions of dollars to do it," end quote. Or you can just bring out the free energy tech. But anyways, I don't want to, as you know, let's not go there. The next thing is that the European Union has reached a deal on the Digital Services Act, as it's called, for, quote, making the internet a safer place by requiring social media platforms to more aggressively police their platforms than ever before. The provisional agreement reached today is subject to approval by the Council and the European Parliament. I don't want to get into this right now, if I'm being totally honest, because I've been down this road many times before on previous Krakens. I'm not a fan of this. I mean, this to me humbly opens the door for intelligence agencies to use deliberate backdoors that have been made to look like accidents by the front-end developers to enter said digital services, databases, servers, you name it. Yeah, I'm going to leave that there. So the next thing is that President Macron has won re-election in France. Le Pen received 41.8% of the votes, however, highest in her last presidential bid. So Emmanuel Macron got 58.2 and Le Pen received 41.8. Wow. Okay. Now, this is what gets interesting. I wanted to report this in this order chronologically. Twitter has decided to re-examine Elon Musk's bid. The two sides are meeting Sunday to discuss the takeover bid, the Wall Street Journal reports. You want my dead-on personal opinion? This is what happens when intelligence agencies go, holy crap, we can't control it. We can't control a communication tool that is essentially vital to keeping the control structure intact in a multitude of factors. That's my personal take. I could be wrong, but now, this is what's quite peculiar. Speaking of which, by the way, we will follow up on this meeting that's occurring Sunday. The next thing is that biotech says in its annual report to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission that the efficacy of its current mRNA corona vaccine may not be sufficient for permanent regulatory approval. I'm going to leave that there. This is according to investors.biontech.de/node/ all bunch of numbers and symbols and stuff. I'm saying that for the sake of YouTube. I'm literally reading word for word what's been stated. So, again, the next thing is that, following this now, Twitter said the platform is back on track to reach a deal with Elon Musk as soon as, again, this was April, please forgive me, 25th. Today's as soon as yesterday. Now we see, for example, that the final stretch occurred, and then, boom. As of this morning, last night, Twitter has been sold to Elon Musk and will go private after agreeing to a deal worth $44 billion. Musk said on the deal, quote, free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, and Twitter is the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. I also want to make Twitter better than ever, end quote. Many have said, is Trump going to come back? Because he tweeted after buying Twitter, he goes, I hope even my harshest critics remain on Twitter, because that's what free speech is all about. Now, the reason I say we're still going to follow up on Sunday is because, pertaining to this, as I understand it, and again, I could be very incorrect here. There are still meetings off the books that are going to be taking place pertaining to a handover and exchange of intelligence data and information. This is not as simple as, again, oh, Elon might have it, he doesn't. Oh, now he's got it. This is why I say we're still going to follow up Sunday. Because for those that say, Dave, you're just reading an outdated headline. I promise you, folks, there's a reason. I bet you there are still, in my humble opinion, there are still meetings that are occurring. The next thing is that China has stated, right out of a video, the Quad and the Five Eyes Alliance, the U.S. is using democracy and human rights as pretext to create division and stoke confrontation, and, quote, the U.S. is the master of disinformation, end quote. I'm going to leave that there. Truly, I'm just, for the sake of YouTube, I am quoting what was stated, so I'm leaving that there. The next thing is that Beijing plans to expand the scope of mass testing to its entire city, Chinese authorities announced during a press conference. The fear of a hard lockdown like in Shanghai triggered panic buying in the supermarkets of the mega city. I'm going to leave that there, honestly, and I say that because if I'm not on the ground myself, I don't in either direction, and I really mean that. It's not for me to say. And this is why I say this, not for the sake of copping out, of taking a particular perspective, but more so because this is how I would encourage you folks to think in terms of, not saying I know best or better, just because I'm behind the mic doesn't mean that, let me be clear, but I'm saying in the sense of removing emotion from it and looking at it objectively, or at least attempting to. So again, the next thing is that Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov says, quote, "The danger of a nuclear war is serious, it is real, and it cannot be underestimated," end quote. NATO de facto entered a proxy war with Russia when they started to supply Ukraine weapons, Lavrov said. Unfortunately, to be honest, for those that if you remember, the former European Union head said he had spoken with the leaders of other planets and they're concerned about the affairs of the European Union. A lot of people laugh, saying, why would aliens care about Europe or a made-up committee or congregation of nations, if you will. Again, think about if you were to go to another species that you are more advanced than them on, you'd want to sort of show respect out of good faith to their groups, committees, and all of this, their culture, if you will. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just, again, perspective in this regard. The next thing is that Twitter's source code has now been locked down to make it harder for current employees to make unauthorized changes to the platform, Bloomberg reports. You see what I mean by intelligence moves? So again, speaking of which, Twitter employees apparently added a public and empty repository called The Algorithm on the platform's GitHub account shortly before the source code was locked. Musk said he wanted to make the Twitter algorithm open source. For non-techies, in layman's terms, it seems that some developers at Twitter wanted to send a message to Elon Musk by uploading this empty software repository. Yeah, again, as I say, a chess game. You see how personal it's getting for a lot of these people? It's very unfortunate. The next thing is that Sweden and Finland have reportedly agreed to submit NATO applications at the same time, and that it will happen in the middle of next month. Okay, this is what I mean pertaining to the acceleration of some type of confrontation. I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm not saying joining NATO is good nor bad. I'm just saying that the contexts in which things are currently in, the state of affairs, certainly not its most ideal. And I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm just trying to be as honest with you folks as I can relative to my personal opinion, perspective. If I'm not in those meeting rooms, we don't know what's going on, truly. We don't know. Just keep in mind that blackmail, intelligence, leverage, it's used way more than is let on. The next thing is that Germany plans to supply technically refurbished Gepard anti-aircraft tanks to the Ukraine. This would mark a shift in Germany's reluctance to supply heavy weapons to the theater of war in Eastern Europe. Again, go figure, as it's called in the headline, theater, but one could say, could we speculate? I'm not saying this is what did occur, but why was it that Germany was initially hesitant to do anything, and all of a sudden now they're like, oh, all of a sudden let's help Ukraine? Were they blackmailed by other? I'm not saying CIA or American, could be otherwise. Were they blackmailed in a leveraged way that essentially cornered them strategically to provide weapons unless something else much bigger were to be revealed? This is the thing that we don't see on the surface, folks. So, again, I'm not saying that's what is, I'm just saying that is what does indeed occur often and is what could be in this particular case. The next thing is that China's President Xi has ordered officials to outpace U.S. economic growth this year, despite the COVID lockdowns, to demonstrate the superiority of the one-party communist system. Again, to me, strategy. At this point, guys, I don't... Again, unless we're there in the meetings with them, the tension is really ramping up, if I'm being straight with you. In my opinion, I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I gather. The next thing is that the IIHF, please forgive me, let me just open this picture here to see. The International Ice Hockey Federation has canceled the Ice Hockey World Championship in Russia. Makes sense. In either direction, I would do that, to be totally fair. Speaking of which, Russia has reportedly suspended natural gas supplies to Poland according to local media. And an update shortly after was that Gazprom, which is the Russian oil company, denies Polish media reports about halted gas supplies, but says Poland has to pay up in Russian rubles today. So again, it's a game, guys. It's a game. The next thing is that Joe Biden has had $5.2 million in unexplained income, an analysis of the president's financial records show, according to the dailymail.co.uk. Make of that as you will. Make of that as you will. And I truly do mean that. Again, here's the thing. I'm not trying to say because he's a Democrat. I would say this. I said this about Trump as well, too, to be totally fair and consistent. But you're talking about a guy who called Ukrainians Iranians at the State of the Union. And Kamala, even you could see her. She's like, I don't know about that. So you see what I'm getting at here. Speaking of Kamala, she has tested positive for COVID. She is fully vaccinated and boosted twice, meaning she received 4 vaccine injections. Again, make of that as you will. I truly do mean that, and pardon me if I got a little bit, if you heard me giggle a bit there, if I let my personal opinion get in the way. The next thing here is that we're just going to scroll through some business news here. We see that the Ukraine war is going to cause the worst price shock in 50 years, for example. Right? You see, for example, why Elon Musk has been so keen to buy Twitter. Another headline reads, Elon Musk warned he must protect Twitter users. Another headline is why Argentina is embracing cryptocurrency. Another one here, shoppers could face 271 euros rise in annual food bills. Interesting. So the reason I wanted to read all these headlines to you folks out so avidly in this particular regard is because just goes to show I have to be careful here because I don't want to get nicked off of YouTube, at least yet. But read between the lines of the headlines I just read back to back, folks. We see more of a strategical shift rather than wanting to focus in on each story specifically that intends to, or dare I say, in my humble opinion, tends to instill and evoke an emotional response, if that makes sense. So when I see things like this, I wanted to sort of give that as an example to kind of wrap things up. And then, of course, there are the stories that we should not be even focusing on because we see, for example, hold on. Let me read 3 more headlines. For example, one of the 3, dare I say, should be focused on. And we'll do a little bit of a fun game at the end here. I will give you folks like 10-15 seconds to decide what you think should be the one we should focus on, and then the ones that we shouldn't. So I'll read 3 headlines. First one, can meat be grown in space? That's number 1. Number 2, Kardashians deny faking Roblox sex tape scene. Questions are being asked about a scene in the Kardashians when Kim's son finds a sex tape ad on Roblox. And the final headline is, my negative online review was blocked. Regulators are trying to clean up the murky truth in online reviews. Which one do you think we should be focusing on? Not saying I know better than you folks. I'm just saying that, in my opinion, I would go for the my negative online review was blocked first and foremost. Because when I look at the can meat be grown in space headline, I see, personally, predictive programming to prepare for something down the road. When I see the Kardashians headline, I see just an emotional distraction to deter you from whatever larger focus or goal you had throughout your day. Truly mean that, whether it was a physical material goal or something in your mind. So again, just wanted to kind of give that perspective. The reason I say, for example, I would humbly recommend we look at things like my negative online review was blocked is because, dare I say, yes, this is, let me give you an example. So you know the episode we did a couple weeks back pertaining to, we used open source data showing a World Health Organization PDF on their website showing about how, extremely low frequencies, ELFs, ULFs, VLFs, they all mean the same, very low, ultra low, extremely low, hug the ground, and then work its way up into the body. This is just, the bioresonance, electromagnetic. This is not a conspiracy or anything like this. We showed a diagram of this from the WHO's own website. 48 hours later, after that video went up, all of a sudden the diagram was removed. I'd like to thank Naomi from the members for pointing this out to me. I am not saying that we are the reason it got taken down. I'm just saying that to get to my point, say, for example, in any official capacity I try and cite that now, because it's been removed, it no longer officially exists. You guys see what I'm saying? So this is what I mean when I say we should probably focus on the "my negative online review was blocked" headline, right? Regulators are trying to clean up the murky truth in online reviews. So again, and of course, this is according to BBC.com, the headlines that we've been reading at the end here. And so, of course, folks, I'd like to thank all of you so very kindly for this nice Kraken roundup. We'll be doing another Kraken in a couple days from now. And I will say that things are getting very exciting for the show in many different ways, in many different directions. So without further ado, folks, thank you so very kindly. Cheers.